Good evening, everyone, and happy Monday. I would now like to call the Nash County Board of Education's committee meetings to order. The first committee that will convene tonight is the Student Support Services and Operations Committee. Mrs. Thomas Bullock.
Good evening. At this time, I will call to order the Student Support Services and Operations Committee. I'll start with roll. Dr. Chavis, Mr. Dean Edwards,
Here.
Mr. Ricky Jenkins,
Here.
Mr. Bill Sharp.
Here.
Okay, and I am here, so a quorum is established. I will start with the approval of the meeting minutes. At this time, I will entertain a motion to accept.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Sharp, seconded by Mr. Jenkins. I'm sorry. Mr. Dean Edwards,
Yes.
Mr. Ricky Jenkins,
Yes.
Mr. Bill Sharp,
Yes.
and I am a yes, so it is approved. So this evening we have two action items. We'll start with Mr. Byer. It's actually the transportation update for information only.
Good evening, board.
Good evening.
So, you got me? So today I'd like to share some of the transportation updates for the month of February. So this is the updates from the DMV. DMV has hired a new trainer for Nash and Halifax counties. His name is Dean Wheeler, and he'll join the school bus safety on March 18th to begin his field training.
Yay.
Excited, yay. DMV plans on hiring a driver education program specialist to train fast track drivers in an entry-level training program within the next couple weeks. That should get around two more drivers their license, hopefully.
So if he's joining them, well, go ahead. I'll ask
Okay.
a question when you finish.
All right.
I'm sorry.
Mhm. So driver overview. Nash County Public Schools employs 113 bus drivers. 83 of the drivers run morning and afternoon routes. 24 have dual roles at Nash County, driving a bus and working within the school system. 6 drivers are part-time that work either in the morning or in the afternoon. Nash County manages a daily fleet of 107 buses to address the transportation needs of 5,824 students in the morning, afternoon, or both. This includes 23 EC buses, which on average transports 11 students per day. Additionally, there is 84 regular buses accommodating an average of 69 students per day. We currently have a total of 467 runs across 27 schools. Among the drivers, 33 handle 6 or more runs daily, 64 manage 4 more runs, and 24 are responsible for 2 runs each day. Drivers assigned to rural routes should complete no more than 4 runs per day. Drivers needed by location. The southern Nash end of the county particularly has the most extensive rural areas, requiring the significant portion of our drivers. Unfortunately, we have dedicated team of drivers willing to collaborate and take on additional runs each day. Currently, Southern Nash High, we have 8 drivers handling 6 runs a day. I don't know how that got in there, I apologize. But currently, Southern Nash High, we are missing 8 drivers. Southern Nash Middle, we have 5 drivers that are missing. They're doing at least 6 runs a day. Northern Nash, Nash Central are both experiencing a shortage of 4 drivers each. And the Rocky Mounts area schools require additional 5 drivers to meet their needs. At the beginning of the school year, we started out with the fleet of 115 buses. Throughout consistent efforts to ensure accurate student ridership data, we identified and removed 1,400 students. This outcome allowed us to optimize our resources and reduce the number of buses on the road by 8. Challenges. A persistent challenge faced by a transportation system is the shortage of drivers. Addressing this issue is crucial to maintain a seamless and dependable bus service for our students. Any questions,
I have a question.
Ms. Bullock?
Your first slide,
Mm-hmm.
March 18th, which is not come yet. So he won't start training until the 18th.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
And it's an 8 to 10 week training period. So we're still talking, summertime.
right. I was getting happy that it was gonna be immediate, but then I thought, that can't be. You do. Okay, thank you. Doesn't take much to make me happy. I was getting excited on that one.
Any other
Okay.
questions?
Any other?
That's it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we'll go on to Mr. McQueen, and this one is an action item.
Yes. Good evening, Dr. Washington, to Mr. Lamb and Dr. Ellis, and to the remaining members of the board. I'm here tonight to seek your approval for contract renewal with Conterra Broadband Services. And Conterra Broadband Services, this serves as all the internet access to all of our schools and our administrative sites. So the terms of this new contract is 6 years, and it ends in June 30th, 2029. And in this new contract, it reflects the new the schools and administrative sites as of July 1st, which is 24 sites. And the monthly cost is $33,216 and an annual cost of $398,592. And the funds are going to come, funds from E-rate are going to be used as well as with DPI. So this would be an out-of-pocket cost, no out-of-pocket cost to the district. So the superintendent is requesting approval for the items presented.
Any questions? Okay, so at this time, I will entertain a motion to approve this to go before the full board.
So moved.
Okay, moved by Mr. Sharp, second by Mr. Jenkins. Mr. Edwards? Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Sharp?
Yes.
And I am a yes, so it is approved to go before the full board. All right, thank you, Mr. McQueen. We will move on now to Dr. Farrow. And this is for information only as well.
Good evening to members of the board. You can go ahead and advance, Mr. McQueen. Thank you, sir. So today we wanted to take the opportunity to present to you what we do as a district when it comes to a comprehensive approach to school safety. Often when we think about school safety, I know we think about the hard elements that we have in place, such as our camera systems and our evolve systems, but we want to talk about all the things that we do to embrace and uphold school safety within our schools. So school safety is about a comprehensive approach that starts with a positive relationship between the students and adults in the building. I don't care what you do in a school, if there's not positive relationships, if they're not adults who are actively seeking every day to build positive relationships with students, you cannot have a comprehensive approach to school safety. Whenever we've had a gun in any of our schools, whenever we've had any issues that could be dangerous within our school, it started with a student trusting an adult to share that information with them. Whether that adult was a teacher, teacher assistant, bus driver, SRO, again, it goes back to the relationship between the adults and the students in the building. So there's three components that we're looking at when we're talking about a comprehensive approach to school safety. We're talking about the physical safety, access, control, and security. We're talking about student behaviors when we're addressing misbehavior, mental health concerns, and making sure that our social emotional health of our students and our staff are in a good place. We're talking about school climate. What do students, what staff, what does parents think about the environments of our building, and actually what is the environments within our building? When students and staff and parents come to our buildings, do they feel safe? And the other, let me go back, Mr. McQueen. Thank you, sir. Okay, you can. It's okay. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your help. Back here. So there's a term that someone has coined. I don't know if it was Mr. Ward or Miss Grant, or someone coined it, but hardware plus hardware. And that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about the heart of the adults in the building, plus the hardware that we have in place to ensure that school safety is happening at the level that we want to see it happening. And the last piece of this is professional development and training. Regardless of what we have in place, what we're doing, we have to make sure that our staff is equipped with the training and knowledge to put, whether it's a program in place that we're using, whether it's evolve system that we're using, whatever it is that we're going to implement, we have to make sure that our staff are trained. So professional development and training is a big component of comprehensive school safety as well. And with that being said, I'm going to have Ms. Grant.
Yes, so thank you for doing that introductory slide for me, Dr. Farrow. But some of the trainings that we offer, when we really look at what the needs of our students are, we have to equip the teachers with the skills and the tools in their toolbox to effectively address the needs of our students. And the needs of our students have just gone up and up, especially with our mental health issues that we're seeing with even our younger children. But we used to do CPI, which is the Crisis Prevention Intervention. We have changed to NCCDI, which is the same thing, but it really focuses on communication and de-escalation intervention, with the physical aspect being the very last thing that happens when a student is at threat to themselves or to others. So we have a requirement that all of our exceptional children staff receive this NCCDI training, and anybody else, we've trained all of our administrators in this, and anybody else in regular classes, and we provide subs and everything. So we do feel like that's a critical training for our students, our teachers. Okay, and then youth mental health first aid. We are very fortunate to have trainers within our district for youth mental health first aid, which just teaches common mental health challenges, look-fors. It teaches that an action plan for help for students who are in crisis and out of crisis. And so we are lucky to offer that as well. I know that there's often a waiting list for that training. Often a waiting list for that training. So we're happy about that. And then also we provide training specific to resiliency and trauma. And then we have been doing this training for since probably about 2017, 2018 with our schools and our staff on that. But I'm going to let you kind of just read that training. And then CHAMPS is something we implemented in 2017. All schools have been trained within this framework. I'm hoping that you remember me saying this before, but it really stands for the conversation, help, activity, movement, participation, and success. So oftentimes we feel like our kids walk in a school building and are just expected to do school and know the nuances of walking in the lines and how to manage their voices. So this teaches a classroom management framework for our teachers. It's especially helpful for our new teachers and our beginning teachers, as well as some of our veteran teachers who just need some different classroom management strategies. We also provide follow up all the trainings with fidelity measures or supports in place for all the administrators if they need us to come in and do further training. Then, as a part of legislation, we now have required mental health training that all staff, beginning in 2021, that work directly with youth have to receive yearly training on youth mental health, suicide prevention, substance abuse, teen dating, sexual abuse, and sex trafficking. And we implemented a new training on Stop the Bleed for all of our staff to have as well, and then additional training for our first responders. And then I think Mr. Ward's up next.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening. This brings us to one of the aspects, the physical safety of our plan. Ensure that all students are physically safe in the buildings and in the schools and also in our surrounding buildings as well. Of course, you know, each one of our schools that we do have a safety plan that's required by the state, and the school risk management plan, which is a repository for all of our safety plans at the state level, where in case there's a disaster or a incident that may require emergency response from Nash County or Edgecombe County. Thank you. Also, schools are required to have what we call 2 tabletop activities, where these are just scenarios where staff members in the faculty, they are required to respond to the correct procedure or practice during a very specific safety situation. We had our first one on November 20th, and the second one is due by March 4th. Many schools have, March 4th, I'm sorry, and most schools have already conducted their second tabletop activity. Some of the physical aspects in place, again, we have controlled access doors in all of our schools and buildings. Of course, you know that visitors must be buzzed in to the main entrance or some other designated entrance. The electronic security system, better known as Evolve, is in all of our middle and high schools. Right now, we're still implementing the Rave Panic Button, which is an app on a smartphone for all schools where they can notify 911 and also members of their site, just in case there's an incident or an accident on their campus. Full-time and part-time SROs in all of our schools. Also cameras, security cameras in our schools as well. This is the safe boat barricade locks, excuse me. The safe boat barricade locks was part of our safety grant that we put in this year that was approved. So we plan to install those locks in all of our elementary schools next year for the 24-25 school year. And of course, cybersecurity, this helps protect us against any type of cyber attacks, where we have the firewall alerts and indicators in place to help protect us or prevent or mitigate those types of attacks. Of course, as Dr. Farrell mentioned, safety strategy, building those positive school culture relationships is job one. And so all schools, 2 years ago, we implemented the discipline matrix and code of conduct in all schools. This provides a level of consistency throughout schools in terms of responding to infractions. And all students and staff have a fair and consistent manner so that there's no ambiguity about what you should do in the event that you should have a student to discipline in a fair and consistent manner. Also, bullying protocols are in place that's governed by our school board policy. Thank you. Some of the proactive measures did the trick. Some of the proactive measures implemented to help improve school climate are social emotional programs. You're going to hear more about that in a few minutes. Of course, bullying prevention programs, MTSS, which is known as the multi-tier system of support. And we also, as required by the state, we must have risk and threat assessments. And of course, Christy just mentioned the CHAMPS implementation in our schools as well. And that brings us to the student behavior component. Thank you.
Good evening. So I'm going to talk about student behavior, which is what we have in place to actively address the behavior, which includes mental health, behavior, trauma, and discipline. So some of these are reiterating what we've already said. We have these clearly defined, fair, and widely used discipline policies. We encourage positive behavior, PBIS, and that goes hand in hand with the CHAMPS training that we've had put in place as well. We teach students how to regulate their emotions, to meet their needs, how to handle what comes up. And that's through, it starts in preschool with the preschool pyramid model, which is their social emotional model they use. And then with K through 8, we use Second Step. We use School Connect and NC-COM, BCOM with our high school students. And we also have various SEL lessons that are implemented in the high schools. We use the behavior intervention matrix, which was created a couple years ago, which are tailored interventions. What we heard back from a lot of teachers and student services is we need some really specific interventions that are already developed that we can implement when students need more. So we came up with the matrix based on our most highly seen behavioral concerns that we have, that teachers can use, student service staff can use, and some of those smaller groups if supplemental needs are out there. We also, as Christy talked about, the professional development and all of the different professional development we've been offering, most of them started in 2017. So we've been building this capacity for a while with our staff. We have access to school-based mental health in all of our schools. Every school has an agency assigned to them to provide that school-based service. Also, we have our student service staff is trained in traumatic event debriefing. So in the situations where we do have traumas occur, we have groups that can go into the schools to support the students as well as the staff. This is just we've talked about the MTSS, the tiered support. So this is just a good, clear picture of what that looks like. So for our core, for all of our students, we have Second Step, School Connect, targeted SEL lessons, the Reconnect for Resiliency, the North Carolina Public School Forum Resilience and Learning Project, CHAMPS PBIS, and SEL standards mapping. And the standards mapping are DPI connected the competencies that we're looking for. And these are based on the portrait of a graduate as well. What we're looking for mapped to the existing essential standards in the 12 content area. So that can be used across the district in all instruction. At our second level, tier 2, we have the behavior intervention matrix. We do interventions for targeted groups. We have something called Check and Connect. We also have groups called Define Me for girls, Real Talk for our boys, and we're doing therapeutic drumming as well in some of our elementary schools as a pilot, and we're wanting to expand upon that. Again, our school-based mental health. We also do a lot of community mental health referrals and have good relationships throughout our district with the different community mental health agencies. And then, of course, if need be, we can intensify these different interventions. We also have day treatment at the elementary and middle school level at Williford and Edwards. We also do some higher level case management if there are students who have intense mental health needs and referrals. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some pathways to violence and how there are a number of points along those paths where we can intervene. And so there's two different pathways. One is called the effective impromptu. And that's when a student has a grievance and becomes agitated and escalated and acts out. That's more of an immediate one. The second one is more of an intended, it could be over a long term, that a student has a grievance, builds knowledge, ideation, starts researching, preparing, and acts. That's more of a targeted. And so that's one area where we've really focused our training with all of our student service staff, with our administrators, how to differentiate. So when we're assessing, we can pick up on those cues of where a student is. Is this an impromptu, effective, I'm just mad because I had to eat Wheaties and I wanted Frosted Flakes for breakfast? Versus, is this something that developed a long time ago, a bullying instance where a grievance has grown and something develops? So we're really looking for those cues in developing our interventions. Which leads me to, we do two types of assessment. This is our data for our threat to others. We've been doing this, we have data since 2018. We actually started doing these assessments in 2016, but we did not capture the data as clearly as we have for the past, going on, I guess we're 6 years, aren't we? And as you can see, there has been an increased amount of high level and concerning threat to others. And again, as we're doing these assessments, that's part of the assessment. Is this something, what kind of interventions do we need to get in to be able to stop and intervene in that pathway to violence? And the next slide is our suicide assessments, and the same thing, because we're talking about concerns to self and concerns to others here. We also have the Say Something anonymous reporting system. This was rolled out in the state in 2019, and we were actually one of the earlier districts to be signed on to this program. It has been really good as far as we feel like stopping concerns for, as you can tell from the data that I put up there, this is where we are for this year. And actually, it's 2 more. We've had 1 more suicide ideation and 1 more where there was over a weekend report of a weapon in a car. And so that, I mean, that we can't, we can't put a price on that information for our schools and our administrators and being able to get in and stop, protect everybody and put interventions in place that we need. So the final thing is looking at the continuum of behaviors that we have. So just talking in these slides, obviously we have some low-level concerns all the way up to very imminent high-level concerns. And we have interventions all along the way. And so what we say is if you interact with a student and do an assessment, and if we deem that it's a low level, you have a relationship with that student. Go ahead and start building that relationship. That's a student you now know in the building. Put something in place to help them connect to the adults and extracurricular. Because what we know is if students have relationships with adults, that is the #1 protective factor that students can have. As we go up the continuum, if students need higher level of services, that doesn't mean we stop the lower level of services, it just builds so that their needs are met. All of these are case by case. We look at individuals for their safety plan and individual plans that we do put in place because every student need is different. So we try to make sure that we address them individually.
Ms. Kerr, before you walk away, if you please make sure you talk about how we involve parents in this process as well.
Definitely. So parents are always very important. And I would say are key. So whenever assessments are done, whenever we do not make any referrals to agencies, school-based or outside, without first working with the parent, all of our school-based safety plans, and I'll say return from reentry from hospitalization plans, any of those are directly involving the parent. So we sit down with the parent, we have reentry meetings, we have safety meetings, we have all kinds of intervention planning meetings, and the parent is right there at the table helping to develop these plans. We often, with a number of them, even come back within like 45 days because we want to say, hey, is this working? Is this not working? And again, with the parent at the table with this whole process.
Okay, and so one of the proactive approaches that we feel really good that we implemented at the district level last year and then tiered it down into the school level this year is we developed student support teams at every school. So we have the counselor, the nurses, the social workers, the psychologist, and administrator. Some of the schools have pulled in additional staff, some of their lead teachers. We have asked them to at least meet monthly. And a lot of them have actually moved to meeting bi-monthly because what this is doing is looking at academics, attendance, any student concerns, behavior discipline, and school-based mental health referrals. And what are we doing to help the students? So when they sit down and talk about each child, talk about what will happen next, who'll do what, and at the next meeting come back and say, did we fulfill what we said we were going to do, and are we seeing a difference in the child's attendance or performance? In the past, you've heard us talk about the attendance teams that some of the schools have, and so we've combined it all so that we're really looking at the whole child from everybody's perspective, because sometimes the nurse needs to be involved because it's a medical issue. And so I just wanted you to kind of put on, and just to see, I'm not really going to go over this, is how we've really focused on the well-being of the whole child by pulling all the different specialized instructional support together and not having it all fall on the counselor or all fall on the social worker. It's a true teamwork that we have where we're working together to meet the needs of the whole child. I'm not going to go through this, but real quickly, we also have our district BEAM team. And then which has the members here, and you can go one more. Embedded within the BEAM team is our mental health action plan, our district mental health plan and our BEAM team action plan. And we have to update this annually, and we report to you every, I think, August or by September, we have to report back to the state that we have updated our plan. And then yearly, this gets in and approved by the state. So we'll be coming back to you with that. Our last thing just to mention and just to keep this out there is that we were very fortunate in 2021 to be at that time one of 6 LEAs throughout the entire state to receive a 5-year grant that addresses the 3 tiers of mental health: the promotion, the prevention, and the intervention. And so we just kind of want to keep out there of how fortunate we are. There's a lot of districts that ask how we do all that we do, and we will seek any type of funding there is out there to bring it in and help with this. So we got, I think, what, 5 million? 5 million for a 5-year grant. So that's been very helpful for us. That's it. Do we have any questions?
Any questions? Mr. Edwards?
Dr. Farrow, how many metal detectors do we have still on standby?
We have about, I want to say, between 29 and 30.
Is there any plans of putting them back into service?
So, Mr. Ward. So, so Mr. Ward and I have had conversations about him pulling in our elementary schools. Yes, I'll stay right there. Pulling our elementary schools, a sample of principals from elementary, to talk about a way that we could possibly use our metal detectors in our elementary schools. We do not want to make it a run-of-the-mill where they're running every child through every day, because we just feel like that process would be long and arduous, and it would keep students from getting into school in a timely manner. But we do want to try to figure out a way, with the help of our elementary principals, as a way to effectively use those metal detectors. The other thing that Mr. Ward talked briefly about, and that's why I'm asking him to come back up, because I want to highlight that point. One of our focus is making sure that we try to get more things in place for our elementary schools for security, since we do not have the Evolve scanners there. And so one of the things that we completed the school safety grant for this year was those locks that he was talking about. And so Mr. Ward has really jumped in, and I'm going to let him talk about the locks, because he can talk better about them than I can, and what our plans for them are during the 24-25 school year.
Actually, I may need Ms. Graham, but those locks, these are, they're very, I wish we could show you a picture of them. We should have had a sample of, they're very sophisticated locks where teachers would not have to go outside anymore to lock their doors. And that, as you recall from one of the school shootings, teachers had to go out in the hall and physically lock their doors and compromise their safety. These locks will prevent that. They're very high tech, and so we've priced those out, and we have right now we're going to have them implemented or installed in all the elementary schools for the 24-25 school year as another layer of safety, until we can just continue to just keep adding on until we can make sure, I hate to use the word fortified, but to make sure our schools are safe as much as possible.
How much is that going to cost?
We priced those out. It was $400.
Yes, we have the safety grant. We wrote a safety grant with the Center for
Got
Safer Schools.
400,000.
It'll be about 400,000, and it should be a wash with the schools that we won't have in the new schools, because we'll be adding Edwards Elementary next year. We'll need to do. So roughly about.
Thank you, Mr. McQueen. He just pulled that out. That's what they look like.
And so what our plan is to make sure that all of the classroom doors where our students will receive these first. So throughout our schools, our elementary schools, we want to make sure that we're placing those locks on our classroom doors first. And then we will go back and start working on other spaces within the building. But we want to start with our classrooms.
Any other questions? I do have a
I
question.
want,
Go ahead, Mr. Sharp.
no, I'll pass for right now.
Okay. I think my other concern, and I think I spoke probably a couple of months ago, some of our schools are not encased and they're not enclosed, and you can easily walk in and out of some different buildings. So I know that I've mentioned like fences or something to just, or gates, kind of like what Miss Miller was talking about at Rocky Mount Middle. So that gate, something similar to that. I know that that takes money, time, and all those things. But also, we have a lot of students when we do have those multiple buildings who are locked out, who are standing outside for 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, who can't get inside because that section of the building does not have like a buzz in or out system. And so unless the teacher sends the student with the badge to another part of the building and then sends them back, which in and of itself is a safety, concern, then they can't get in. So I would like to request that we, just do some information, some research rather, on being able to get those systems, those buzz in and out systems, at least at those doors. And I think we already have that like on one side. But we just may need to get it, cover it through those entryways, because we have little kindergartners standing outside for 20 minutes, just.
Right. And Mr. Ward and I will sit down with Ms. Miller to talk about this. We do have several of our campuses that are open. And, when you're trying to fortify and close things up, that when they were built, schools were not built to keep people out. They were built to welcome folks in. It's a drastic change. And so some of it, we're trying to eat this elephant one piece at a time. There's a lot going on, but we are aware that even though we have made some great strides in the district, we still have a lot of work to do.
I certainly appreciate it. Mr. Mr. Sharp?
I'll wait. Just call me when you get done with the people that see you.
Can you explain more about the rave? We hear a lot about it, but there just doesn't seem to be this fully operational plan. Can you explain more and tell us when it's going to be here?
Yeah, so right now we're still working with support system there. What they have to do, and this is the tech side, so Mr. McQueen, jump in if I'm wrong. They have to do what you call go in and geofence every school. They, which is put a perimeter, a border around the school in terms of when the alert goes off in that area, those people within that area will be notified within the school. As far as the timeline, our timeline was to have it implemented hopefully by this week, but we do know tech support was waiting for Nash County to come aboard. They're a 911 center. I checked this morning, there were still certain schools not affiliated with the with the Nash County 911 center. So as of last Thursday, they were not, but Nash County is on board. There are some schools affiliated, so we're still working with their support staff there to get that implemented. Thank you.
Mr. Sharp?
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate this. And let me just start out by saying, I think Dr. Ellis and Dr. Fair, you guys are doing a phenomenal job. I hear about all the stuff that we're rating high in the state when it comes to our safety, our kids, and a whole lot of areas that you guys are excelling in. I just want to talk briefly about that safety side, because Dr. Ellis, we had a conversation earlier about those access point doors, and I talked to Dennis, and he was actually talking about putting a buzzer at those doors, especially at the southern end and doors that have free access to them. What's the status of that?
I think Ms. Miller probably can speak to that. I think one of them was done.
Yes, sir. Good evening. We've actually looked into that. I'm gonna turn to Jermaine, correct me if I use this terms wrong. There are some square footage issues, meaning if I buzz in at the front of the school, I'm a student, the camera, the TV screen where they see and they're able to buzz them in and out from different locations, that will not work a certain distance from that hub. So we've looked into that. There is a large expense. We don't have the capabilities to run them at some of the locations, just being honest. We've looked at some other options for exterior doors and changing timers so students could get in and out at various times, and we're still trying to assess all of that. It is truly a roadblock. It is truly a roadblock.
So this will be a question for Mr. McQueen, our IT person. So what you're saying is you can't get extenders like you would do for your wireless routers that will give you access. So the starting point will be minimalized.
As far as technology with networks and things like that, yeah, you can put a router in between the
Right.
two distances, but I'm not sure about 100% sure about this particular device.
So maybe it's the power
yeah.
to be able to
Mhm.
buzz and open the doors, but it is something about the cable that runs the system. From the front office to certain locations, there's only a certain amount of square footage. But we're still
distance.
looking into it there, the distance from point A to point, yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah, because I mean, any little glitch will lock the doors down where they can't use them during the time of changeover, and then they wouldn't be able to be locked down. So they've been doing some test runs on them, and they only work a certain distance. So we're looking into trying to find some other alternatives.
We also had a conversation with specifically at the Southern Nash Middle, because with the transportation issue we're running and people propping the doors open, that the bus transportation group will have a communications with the main office. So when they know a bus is going to be late, they'll have a smaller window or have somebody available at the door to allow them to access that door. Are we working through that as well?
Yes, sir. That's actually the reason I was able to even speak to this. We've bridged some of that gap. It's not 100%. We're still working on solutions, but at this time they're not putting rocks in the doors. So the doors are secured. I actually went during a changeover and listened as they secured themselves. They actually can check that from a hub at central office in our Oak Level facility, and they were able to unlock them so that bus could come in and then lock back and secure them.
That's right. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
And they were keeping
Thank
in
you.
contact with the print. That was a good question. That's how I knew to say, we're still trying to figure out how, if I'm coming in at the backside in that circle area and I want to be buzzed in, there's no way for the secretary at the front office to buzz them in because of the distance. And we're looking at alternatives. Yes, sir.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I was gonna say earlier, I mean, at some point, I feel like almost some of these, not every location, but some of these locations, would it be cheaper to enclose a section of the building and not worry about the buzz? So if you get into that part of the building, you know, you can free flow from one area to the next. Would almost be maybe the same cost, maybe not, maybe cheaper to kind of just brick that area up and cover it than to try to get all this technology. I mean, go back to the basics where we just enclose that area. I mean, and that's just, and I know it won't work for every situation, but certainly
would be tremendous.
right.
Spaces.
Right. But for the smaller spaces, I mean, is that something that we can consider in a small space where you just need a vestibule more so than a buzz system? I mean, where that would work. And I don't know the schools as well as you all do, but I can imagine that in some cases that may work well. Okay. Anyone have any other questions?
I got a question, Rhonda Thomas.
Oh, yes.
Hey, so the safe bolt locking system, is that what we're talking about with geofencing and Nash County 911 and that?
No, sir.
Okay.
Rave is
So-
what we're referencing.
All right. So the safe bolt locking system, have we shown this system to the Nash County Fire Marshal's office and got approval before we alter the locking mechanisms on our doors?
I don't think that there would be a problem because it's not something that has to remain that way. It's only for the event of an emergency.
So I'll
So
give you a
you still
tidbit
would
of
be able
information.
to-
This topic is grown attention across the state with all the schools getting grants, locking doors, means of egress, and it's got a lot of attention. Before I started drilling holes and putting on locks, I would get written approval. Just a tidbit of advice for you, because there's a lot of school systems that had to spend money to take systems back off across the state. I would highly recommend you reach out to them and get written approval before you start.
Yeah, we will reach out to them, but again, I'll say I do not think that it's an issue because you're not talking about that this is the way that we would operate on a daily basis. This would only be used in the event of an emergency where we needed to lock down within the classroom. But I would
Correct.
definitely reach out to them.
Yeah, like I say, that is the sales pitch that a lot of folks have come across, but there's nothing in code right now that says, well, let's just say there's security measures out there, but locking means of egress have gained a lot of attention. So I don't wanna put words in anybody's mouth, but please get written approval before
I
we
will.
start.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
One last one, and there's several thousand reasons for this question.
Mhm.
On the Rave app, that's an app-driven app. It's an app, obviously, but it's cellular-driven, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, my end of the county, where I represent, is cell service is terrible.
Yes.
And like the other night, go to an event, I leave out, and I finally get a notification that went out 40 minutes before that. So I only can imagine during a time of emergency when things are supposed to work well,
Right.
rarely do they. And I just worry about the Rave app, especially on that end of the county. Is there some way of finding extraordinary communication for that, if that's where you're going? Or is there something else we can do for them?
So one of the things, if I could give just a brief history of Rave, Rave came about at the very beginning of the school year, and it was something that the state board was pushing through the Center for Safer Schools. And to be available to receive grant funding, schools had to be working to have the Rave put in place or already have it implemented. So that's how we got to the Rave piece. The second part of that is that Rave serves as another layer of support. So it's not the only thing that we will be using. Still keep in mind that all of our schools still have the red panic button. So in the event of an emergency, they can push that button, and that button sends a call out to an emergency system, which then contacts the 911 center for that area, and they would, and you probably know this, being law enforcement for all over would descend upon the school. This Rave app serves as a way so that if I'm in a school and an active shooter come in, and I'm at Southern Nash High School, and I'm over on the backside of the gym, and I see someone who's armed and unidentified, I can do a 911 alert on that Rave app. And at that point, when 911 sends out its message to police, they know where that individual was at the time that it was notified. So it kind of gives this, of where the person is, but not complete, because the person could be moving. And so it only responds when an alert goes out. And so the hopes is that even though it may not give us the direct position of the person, you can tell from the alert at least where the individual was, and then being able to tap into our cameras would also help in that process. So again, I certainly understand what you're saying is something that we talked about, Mr. McQueen and I, for about 4 months at the beginning of this school year, was kind of back and forth with the company about the possibility of extending cell services in our area where cell service is not good. And when we looked at the dollars and cents of it, and what they were not able to guarantee us, it just did not make sense to try and do. But we certainly will keep looking. And I hope that answers your question.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? Mr. Sharp, you all good?
Yes, ma'am. I'm just gonna reiterate this. I'm gonna say it again. I probably keep saying it till whatever. But Dr. Ellis and his team do a phenomenal job doing the homework, the research, any new application that they're trying to put in, they follow up and do an investigation. They're working with our state legislatures and our people that's making decisions all the time. So I really appreciate the comments, but I also appreciate, I know from my experience, these guys have done their due diligence. They're not going to put something in the system that's going to create an issue. And I just appreciate how they do a thorough job in their investigating their communication across all networks to make sure things are doing properly. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doctor. And thank you to all the presenters. That was very good information to receive. The last item is action item, and that's Ms. Grant.
Yes, so good evening again. What I'm coming for you now is to seek an amendment to our current Chitter Chatter contract, which is our contract company that provides speech and language services to our students with IEPs. So in doing our projections out for the remainder of the school year, we needed to add an additional $55,000 for school, for K-12, and then $30,000 for our private schools, which would bring our total to $575,000 for K-12, and then $120,000 for our private schools. And so I am asking on behalf of Dr. Ellis to approve an amendment to the contract.
So at this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the contract to go before the full board. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? All right. It's not a lot of us here today, so.
Ms. Chavis is in the back.
Oh,
Dr.
Dr.
is in the
Chavis?
back.
Second? Okay. I didn't even see you. Good evening. Thank you. Okay. All right. So I will, so it's been properly moved and seconded by Mr. Sharp and Dr. Chavis. So I will take a roll call vote. Dr. Chavis? Yes. Mr. Edwards?
No.
Mr. Jenkins is not here. Mr. Sharp?
Yes.
Okay, and I am a yes, so it is approved to go before the full board. Anyone have any other questions or concerns? Okay, so at this time, I will adjourn.
Thank you, Mrs. Thomas Bullock. The next committee that will convene is the policy committee. Ms. Evelyn Bullock.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And welcome to the policy committee meeting. We have on the agenda approval of the minutes of our last meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting as presented?
Made that motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of our last meeting. If there are no questions, we will declare the minutes approved as presented. We have one item on the agenda today, and that's policy number 4316, student dress code. The purpose of this being on the agenda is that at our last board meeting, when we voted to approve this policy, there were questions about the 65% of the return surveys that is used to determine whether a school either starts wearing uniforms, or on the other hand, when a school wishes to stop wearing uniforms, the same process is used and the same percentage is used. So we're just open now for questions or comments about the 65%. Before I go to the board members, Dr. Farrer, is there something you'd like to add that I left off?
We had a conversation in full cabinet with the superintendent and his team. We talked about the 65%. The superintendent believes that keeping the 65% in place as it is written would be best. Because as we know, you cannot legislate or make parents mandate them to take a survey. And so we believe that our best option is to do our due diligence in making sure that parents have the information, keep it before them, let them know that what their opportunities are, extend time if necessary. But it would be in the best interest of the district to leave it at the 65% of those returned.
Are there questions or comments from the board? Ms. Bullock?
I know I'm not on the committee. I'm sitting here.
But no, you can have
Okay.
comments. You just can't vote. I'm sorry.
Just from experience, I understand that people are concerned about number versus percentage, but like you said, you can't force people, and those who are intentional and care are going to put in, whether it's yay or nay, it doesn't matter, but they are going to participate. So I just wanted to share that with the board members who do have a vote now, and moving forward. We all know that there are some who just will not, that they're just not going to. So that's why I prefer the percentage, because I completely understand what you're saying, and some parents just will not, but they have the opportunity, and I think that's the most important part.
Is that the only part of this policy that we're going to address?
Yes. Well, that was the reason for it being on this agenda today. Before the vote, the question came up and we needed to vote on the final reading of this policy. So the decision that we made at that last board meeting was that we would discuss that percent. That's the only thing that came up. Do you have another issue?
I thought we were also going to address those full face masks in the policy.
No, I don't
Where some of
remember.
the
I don't
students are
remember
wearing-
that.
Yes, ma'am. What it was is I brought it up when we first started talking about this policy, and I asked about the full face mask where some students are still wearing masks, but it's the full face mask, and the only thing that you can really see is their eyes. And we've even seen videos of students still wearing those, and I didn't know if we wanted to address that particular mask in the system. Now, like what Board Member Gray has on, you see that he's protecting himself and he has a right to do that. Whereas others are wearing masks that hide their entire face, hair, mouth, everything, and they're using that excuse, if you will, as their reason for wearing it. And I'm like, no, if you want to wear a mask, but don't wear an entire hoodie that hides everything but your eyes. And I didn't know if we want to address that while we're talking about uniforms and dress code.
Well, I cannot right now. I have no idea why anyone would want to wear such a thing. And I can't even picture it, to be honest with you.
Well, I can give you
So,
some reasons.
I'm sorry.
I can
So
give you
I'm,
a few reasons.
I'm not saying it does not happen.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm not saying that, but I have a question for the superintendent or Dr. Farrow, and that is, this kind of mask, have you noticed any issues resulting from the kids? And how many kids are we talking about?
I would think it'd be addressed in the dress code per school.
More
I thought
so
if you
than-
covered your face, that would be an issue within itself that should be addressed at a principal level.
And number 4 says are reasonably likely to create a substantial disruption of the educational process or operations of the school. I'm not aware of any issues with the ski type mask that you're talking about that covers the face. That's with just the eyes, bridge of the nose open. I'm not aware of any situations that has been a disruption in school. That's not to say that it hasn't happened. But normally we would expect principals to manage those situations. Knowing our high school principals and our middle school principals, they would not let a student, not to my knowledge, walk around with their heads and face covered in that way without saying something to them. If there's a situation where that has happened, I'm not aware of it. And again, I'm not in the schools. I'm not managing the students, so it's very possible that that's happening, but it's not something that we are aware of.
So you're saying it's during like the COVID thing? I mean, like if you're wearing a mask like gray, as in they're wearing it, the excuse is, this is my mask for protection?
That's what they are saying at this point. But yeah, some folks are still wearing it.
If you could let us know.
It's
what
it's
schools
those masks
we
that come
know
over
better.
your whole head, and just like this part of the face is open.
Just walking around the building with it.
And you see them a lot with young kids and out when they're outside and weather. But I'm just not aware that it's happening. Principals have not brought it to us as a concern to be addressed.
But if you have a particular school, Mr. Evans, by all means, let us know. I'm glad to address it. It's a disruption is what it would be considered in the dress code policy.
Miss Bullock,
Yes, sir.
I've been into numerous of schools with this last month. A whole lot. Very seldom I see any mask any place. And I've been boots on the ground through quite a few schools. I don't see it.
Well, we're not saying that I haven't seen it either, but I'm not saying because I've not seen it that it does not happen. But what I would suggest, Mr. Edwards, is that you give the superintendent and Dr. Farrell the information about where this is happening, because evidently it's not across the district necessarily, and let them investigate under the dress code policy to see if this is against any other policy that we might have, and we'll address it that way. But
So address it in a dress code policy, but not this dress code policy.
but not tonight, because we don't have any information. All I know is that it happens, but to what extent, what other recourse we could take to handle it. I don't think the superintendent or his staff is ready to address that issue tonight. Am I correct?
Just let us know where we need to go address it, we need to address it, but that would be a principal decision. Because I believe it would be a disruption to school.
It would, if I was a principal in the building now, and that was the situation, I would not allow a student to wear it, and I would do so based on number 4 in our current dress code policy.
Yeah. So it's already addressed then. We just have to enforce the policy.
And we can push
That's
something
what
out there to the principals, let them know if there's an issue, we need to address it.
Okay. Are there other questions? Then, as far as this 65%, I agree with the policy as it is, and I agree with it simply because that number was different. I just can't remember for the life of me what that number was way back when. But I do know we changed it because of the returned surveys that we received, and the 65% based on the number of surveys we got seemed to be fair. Mr. Lamb, do you remember?
I think it's always based on the number of surveys we got back.
But we upped the
50%.
percentage. Okay, that's what it was. We upped the percentage, but it still was based on what we got back. And whatever the percentage, from my perspective, there are gonna be some folk who are gonna be diligent and do what they need to do to make sure that their vote is counted. But we're gonna have some folk who are just not gonna take the time to send the surveys back, even if we have it at 30%.
Unless you have a program or feeding.
Unless you have what?
A elementary program or some kind of feeding.
It's always a getting night.
And that still might not get the surveys back. So I agree with the 65%. I'd say leave it alone, but then that's just my take on it. It's the committee who has to make the recommendation to the full board. So the committee that we have,
So moved.
Second.
is that a motion that we keep the policy as it is?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that your take on this? It's been moved and seconded that we keep the policy at 65% as it is. Are there any questions? Is there any further discussion? Then hearing none, the motion is that we recommend to the full board that we keep the policy as it is at 65%. Mr. Dunton, is he online?
He's not here.
Dr. Washington,
Yes.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. So motion carries. We will keep the policy as it is. And to your point, Mr. Edwards, the superintendent and Dr. Farrell will follow up with the masks. Okay. Is there anything else to claim our attention? If not, then I declare the policy committee adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bullock. The next committee that will convene is the Administrative Services and Operations Committee. That's Lank. He's not gonna be here tonight, so that would be Dr. Washington. So we have first on the agenda, let me go ahead and do a roll call for that committee. Dr. Chavis? Here. Mr. Lamb?
Here.
Mr. Gray?
Here.
And Board Member E. Bullock? Here. Quorum established. Thank you. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the meeting from the last, the minutes, excuse me, from the last meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Move to approve.
Second.
Made by Board Member E. Bullock, seconded by Board Member Lamb. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please let it be known by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Motion carried, thank you. We will now have a demerger update for information only. Dr. Ellis.
So we thought it would be good during this committee meeting to really, each department give a kind of a review of where they're at. So tonight, what we're gonna do is share, each department will come up here and discuss. If you have any questions, just probably best if they're up here, just go ahead and ask them the question in their particular department. So I'm just gonna tell you, on our last meeting, I went ahead and visited those schools that were affected in the facility plan. Inglewood, Winston Avenue, Rocky Mountain Middle, Edwards, and Williford. We had a conversation with their staffs. There's a presentation in there that really is just revised, and you can go and look at it, but it's really, the biggest thing, it talks about what the facility plan looks like. It has, back then it talked about the intent to transfer, because we needed to make sure teachers did that. I believe it was by the 15th of February, if I'm right. And then we just had a section where they could ask questions of me, and then any questions we couldn't answer, we would post, they had a chance to post those questions on one of our feeds, and we try to update those questions with some of the answers we have in cabinet. And also we did the same thing at the principal meeting, went over the same presentation just so they would see what we were doing with each school. So that was my part. I think the next one would be facility plan by Ms. Miller.
Good evening again. The Rocky Mountain Middle School update, just at this time, the 500 hall, we've completed the new ceiling tile, the LED lighting on the 500 hall. I think I shared with you, there was some concern in the community about that 500 hall and why it had been closed off since the high school was closed. It was not because it was an asbestos hall and it was reevaluated. There's no asbestos. It is truly because that was a corridor that could be closed off and secured so students did not go down that hallway. It wasn't needed for the staffing and or the space for the students. The classrooms, the hallways have been painted in that space. The mechanical equipment have been ordered. Their expected time should be this week for having that equipment in, and technology's already been updated and complete down that hallway. It looks fantastic. The 400 hall, they've received ceiling tile, new grid and LED lighting. It's all been ordered and received. They're going to start on that March the 4th week. The auditorium, we looked at the handicap accessibility with their lift, and we have already contracted and written a new contractor for bringing that up to speed because it's outdated for that space. Updating the plumbing fixtures in the restrooms, started replacing and changing ceiling tiles in all of those restrooms. And I think I shared with you, there was some new issues that we saw just in the restrooms that just needed to be updated and or painted that we had not seen or we had not had work orders for. So they jumped on that immediately. Phase 1 window survey that's already been completed, and the bids have already started in preparation. The auditorium chairs, they're wooden chairs in the auditorium at this time, and they can be reupholstered like one of our other, either Cedar Grove or Swift Creek had been done at some point. And then the pricing for the card readers for the gates that we referenced that are open now, that'll be open and closing so you can scan in and out with your cards. The next one is, I'm sorry, I just saw I have it. Williford. Those, we have some dividers, they're partition dividers for the NETA space that'll be turning into offices. Again, the plan is to update and replace those. We did put up a few in the NETA section so we could look at them and see if they would be suitable when we use the offices in the other space, but that we don't have the storage for them, nor can they be put together in another location and moved. So they have to be put up in those spaces. So the dividers for the offices will look like those, and they look much nicer and more sophisticated than the curtains that are being used now in NETA. And that's been well received by the staff. The service window, so when you enter NETA, I think we talked about, and this actually came from some of your feedback in our meetings about securing a space for the pre-K so they're not walking around. When the adults come in, there'll be a little bit of a separation. So those doors have already been ordered. They'll be put in during spring break. The door area, so the students, when they come out to go to the cafeteria, it'll be a little bit of a separation. We've actually decided to put in a service window as well because of some of the feedback from the team. So next year, if a student gets called to the office or a teacher says, hey, take this to the office, they don't have to walk out the double doors and around. They can actually feed that through that service window. So they're going to be working on that during spring break. So all this will be in place and used this year, looking into next year's changes. Separation of the door, I'm sorry, can you go back? And the 20 car parking lot, we've already had that bid out. That was in place for NETA for more spacing. We had already looked at that sometime last year. That'll be taken care of during spring break as well. And carpeting, some of the carpet was outdated, some of which was not outdated, has been updated in the last 1 to 2 years. That'll be reused, but they did order new carpeting to be used, square carpets that's a tan color. That's just like these blue ones for Williford for the upcoming plan. And then last is Edwards. We conducted a pre-bid for the plumbing fixtures. We're waiting for DPI comments. I think we shared this with you after the last committee meeting. We had actually sent that into DPI. They have to receive that information, give us feedback, talk about anything that would or would not meet code. So at this time, that's been submitted for a couple of weeks. We're waiting to hear from them any day now. Playground equipment has been ordered for the new elementary school, and that was in the diagram of where that will be. And the abatement for the floor tile has been scheduled for the summer, which we did talk about that in those opening meetings with the teachers. We don't typically do that when there's students and teachers in the building. And that's all I have for those facilities, if you had any questions.
All right, are there any additional questions for Ms. Miller?
I'll speak to that. This one slide that just popped up says City High School, Nash Community College, probably Dr. Honeycutt, about 3 weeks ago said that he would really like to have city on campus. So our cabinet went over there, I guess it was Thursday, to start seeing how many empty classrooms they had available. So we would really like that to happen to build City High School because the numbers are really getting low. So right now we're in process of looking at Nash Community schedule, how many classrooms they can offer us and what we can do to put them on campus. So I got my fingers crossed. It needs to be on that campus for us to be able to have more kids to sign up. So we'll just keep you updated on this one, but that's really all I have right now. But if we could, we would definitely want to start next year to have them on that campus.
Question.
Yes, sir.
So Dr. Ellis, if we do that, that would free up more classroom space for that middle school?
Oh, definitely. It would 14 or 15 classrooms presently. Yeah.
And what's our expected population size for that school for the upcoming year?
Rocky Mountain Middle?
Yes, sir.
So we're thinking maybe 650, 675, depending on when the numbers come in that I think Mr. Ward will talk about shortly.
And so if that's the case, that means is that a maximum number that we want to have for the middle school?
I think that would put Rocky Mountain Middle about around the third largest middle school then, behind Southern Red Oak. It would be about 100 short of Nash Central Middle. So it would be in the, but just remember, our whole goal in Rocky Mountain Middle is to make sure we supply enough kids to Rocky Mountain High School. So
right.
Around 650, 675 would be a good thing for us.
And freeing up that space will give you adequate enough space
Correct.
to do that. Correct. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So at this time, I will review with you the results from our intent transfer window that just ended. And once it ended, we didn't have everybody that participated. Out of about 1,700 employees, 1,331 completed the survey. We have been getting emails and correspondence from different ones that say they forgot and they're completing a manual form at the school level to give to us so that we can update these numbers because the survey has closed at this point. So out of the 1,331 that completed the survey, 187 wants to transfer to a different school within our district. 25 of those that completed the survey says they plan to transition to Edgecombe County Public Schools. 18 of those that completed the survey will resign, but we do not have an actual resignation form in hand. 13 of those that completed the survey will retire, but we do not have an actual retirement form in hand. We did have one retirement form that was completed, but they did not submit a survey. We had 5 to resign. They completed the form. That's the survey form, the resignation form that comes to our office so that we can go ahead and process it, but they did not complete the survey. We have 8 to 9 non-renewals for our VIS, and those are like the ones that come to us from a different country. And we have 150 alternative licenses. Those are the group of people that come to us without a clear license. And as a part of their contract, if they don't complete their coursework, that means that they may be not considered for renewal. And that list comes to you all for approval around the May 15 mark. We do have 25 at this point of that 150, that no matter what they do at this point, they cannot meet the requirements of their coursework. So we know we have 25 that would be non-renewal. And this is updated almost every other day. We are encouraging our principals to go back to the staff, just to poll to see who hasn't completed them, and if not, to include that information on the manual form that they will send to us. I'm not sure if you want me to go into the RIF part of it now, because there is an approval request for the RIF.
So we could wait till we do this, the same slide, and we can do it.
Okay. Student transfer.
So today, our legacy letters for this week will be going out to students and their parents. The letters were sent to our schools on Friday. We asked them to send them out today, but we understand that things happen, and so hopefully they get them all out this week. Those schools know who those students are, who are their legacy students. And when we reference legacy students, we're talking about those students who are currently in grades 9, 10, 11, or 12 and would be returning to Nash County Public Schools next year. They have to request to remain in Nash County Public Schools. So the letters went out today reminding them. We've had 2 meetings. Heather has helped us blast it on social media, on our websites. Principals have had conversations with students. So we wanted to send a letter again as a reminder, because March 22nd is our deadline for those students to opt to remain in Nash County Public Schools. And this also includes any students who have siblings, those legacy students who may have a sibling that's going to the 9th grade. So if those rising 9th graders who have a sibling who's a legacy student, they would have to make sure that their name is on that transfer process, as well. And then April 9th is the creation of our official roster of who our legacy students are. Any questions? Thank you.
Dr. Farrell,
Yes, sir.
quick question for you. The legacy students, the rising 8th graders going to the 9th graders who are piggybacking in on their legacy students grade, they understand that once that student leaves, they're no longer eligible to be attending Nash County schools?
I'm not going to say that they understand it, but we certainly
I want to
share.
make, we communicated that.
Yes, sir. We
Because
have communicated it.
What I wouldn't like to see is these kids coming up, my brother's in the 9th, going into the 10th grade or 11th grade, or a senior, and I'm a freshman, and I'm going to Rocky Mount my freshman year, but my sophomore year, I got to go.
Yes, sir. We have communicated, and it is on the legacy transfer form.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
All right, so as part of the demerger process, finance has begun the process of determining the financial impact that all losing this ADM will do for us. And attached, what you'll see, can you click on that for me? This is just a breakdown by PRC of what, we look to lose with the demerger. And please keep in mind that these dollar amounts do include what will go to the schools. The children that made up this ADM, it will follow the children. All right, so here's a breakdown of the anticipated loss by PRC. And then on the side, you can see a legend there of what you can equate these amounts to. For instance, let's look at 003, that holds custodians, mostly custodians in other positions. That anticipated loss, please keep in mind, those probably were the positions at the schools that will no longer have to have employees at. So these dollar amounts do reflect more loss than what will go to the schools. So we will incur like a loss but it won't be as big as what these numbers are because these are the positions that are going with the 4 schools.
The Edgecombe side's in here.
Right. Does anyone have any questions? So again, in this slide right here, I did notate that the biggest concerns that we have is the loss of funding in 069, of course, our position allotments for the teachers and instructional support. Even though we will lose what is automatically going over to Edgecombe, there will still be additional loss because of what those children made up. I can elaborate just a tad because I saw some faces. So let's say 069, the way that it's allotted, for every one student, you get $100 for one regular student. You get $500 per Title I student. We're losing 4 Title I schools. So that PRC will have a huge impact. It's not just losing students, we're losing expensive students. Yes, these are dollars. And that is where we house our assistant principals, our SROs, and there are a few custodians in there.
Trace,
Yes, sir.
Title I, low wealth is in there?
Low wealth, 031, it is in there, yes, sir.
Okay.
We do anticipate losing funding there as well.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Ms. Sanders, it's Chris Bissett.
Yes, sir.
So you said some of the numbers are, we're losing funding, but we're also losing those positions. So we lose the money, but we're losing the expense. But you just said, but there's some other, other loss that we're going to have. Do you have that number instead of the total number? Because I mean, if I'm losing a teacher dollar and that teacher's going to another school, I don't have to pay that. I get that. But elaborate on what you said about some extra funding and what does that dollar figure look like?
So I am happy to provide the numbers after the money that is to the Edgecombe schools. But the thing is, with us losing the children across all grade spans, the positions for those 4 schools, that doesn't, the positions for those 4 schools, they don't tie into, we're losing the funding for our whole district. So it won't be just the 4 schools and positions that are impacted. It's the class sizes in our high school versus we're losing elementary schools. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not exactly a wash. One position
Correct.
for us may not be that one position for Edgecombe.
So those numbers you just showed, that's not a wash. At the end, what dollar amount are we going to see out of our annual budget?
I will be happy to supply that.
Okay. But because I think at the end of the day, that's the number we as a board need to see. I mean, if we're losing positions that cost us money, that's the wash. But those pieces that the term you use wash, it's not a wash. That's the numbers we need to see for fund.
Yes, sir.
Everybody ready? All right. So we're on the subject of talking about lost. With that being said, E-rate is going to be affected by this as well. And with the E-rate funding, with that side of the county, they have the lowest, I think it's the free and reduced lunch. So we get the high dollars on that side too. So that's going to also be affected. But anyway, moving on and really quickly and very brief, the technology, just to give you an update about. So in terms of negotiating vendor contracts, on the timeline that we initially put out, one of the tasks there was to identify and meet all of the vendors who with current contracts and that are impacted by the demerger. And we've met with every one of them. And the good thing about this, well, let me talk about the concern first. The concern was with all of the vendors that we have. Usually when a vendor, we give away equipment or anything like that, license don't transfer. So in this situation, they are allowing us to transfer some of the license let me give you an example. We use Cisco Meraki. And with that, you have to buy a license for each of those devices. So if we were not able to transfer those licenses, that would have been a big financial impact on the EdgeCom side. So thankfully, I think they're glad that we can transfer those licenses. Some of the other vendors that we're talking about is our Canon contract, which is our copier services. We're also talking about Height Vision, which is our security cameras. And also, one of the other things I want to talk about is our fiber, and I'm talking about that in the next thing. So moving on to the next point, we're talking about finalizing our numbers. And again, one of the tasks that we had was to verify all of the technology assets of those schools, talk about the cost and find out what funding source that they came from. So we have, in partnership with the HR department, we have gone through all of the technology and verified the numbers at all of those schools. So we kind of know what they're getting at the end of the year. And yeah, so we've been in conversation about that. The dual fiber connection piece, the reason why that I put that up there, that's important because this is one of the biggest concerns that we had with this whole demerger is that we use Conterra for our fiber and they don't. They are locked in a contract with Brightspeed, I think it is. And we didn't think that Brightspeed had fiber in that area. So they actually do, and they've actually already started putting it in place. So what they've been doing is meeting with schools, going out to the schools, and I think we got one place that that's left, which is the Child Nutrition Center. So right now, active, we have dual fiber connections, meaning we have our own with Conterra, and they have theirs with Brightspeed. And again, like I said, this was the biggest issue because we didn't think that this was going to be ready by July 1st. So we're good to go. Moving on, just one thing that we have established weekly follow-up meetings, me and Mr. Joe, I call him Joe. But in those meetings, he gives me anxiety, when all the stuff that he has to make sure that he has to have ready by July 1st. So we're trying to, do what we can to help with that. Are there any questions for me? Yes, sir.
Do we have any vendors not willing to work with us?
Well, we have some vendors that they are locked in a contract that they can't transfer. One of those vendors is Conterra, which is the fiber. Another one is Canon. They totally use Toshiba, in which talking to some of the people at the schools, they are really hurt that they can't take our Canon, with them, with all the features and the bells and whistles that we have versus the service that they have. And that's it. Are there any more questions?
I have a question. It's not directly for you. I think it's in reference to this entire process. I know there were individuals who were responsible for pushing this demerger forward to make sure that it happened. My concern is, did they think about the financial cost it would be to our district? Did they think about the financial cost that this demerger would cost our district? And have they thought about how they are going to make the difference in the financial loss? Because we need to still make sure that we can offer every child that is left in this district a quality education, because this demerger is making a huge difference in the final numbers financially. Are we going to go to those individuals who were responsible for pushing this forward to say, hey, we need for you to make up the difference that was lost because you all pushed this without this board, if I'm not mistaken, agreeing with this demerger process?
So what I can tell you is when we started having conversations about the budget, the county commissioners will get two budgets, one with what we used to look like and one what we will look like now moving forward. A good example is Tremaine talked about losing the E-rate funding. So when we craft this budget, we're gonna put in all the losses and the requests we need based on the demerger. And I think we go from there. But I mean, the amount we talk about is $10 million. It's probably more than that. But when you're talking about Title I and all the other, yeah. And I agree with what Ms. Sanders says. You can't just take away a teaching position. It's nothing like that.
Correct.
We can do that. We can give you, that's the easy part for me, because you can just say there's 60-some teachers.
But it's the dollar amount
It's
for
a
each of
dollar
those
amount
students,
that's
especially
gonna
those
be the problem.
special
Yeah,
population students that make a huge amount of our budget.
The state's gonna fund us for a dollar amount, that's for ADM, that's simple. The problem is gonna be the loss of Title I funding, where the students are and where that money's coming from. So you're right, it's gonna be a totally, I can't even remember, but the 69 money and all that, when you're talking about SROs, we've got to have conversations, because we're not gonna have that money, and it's into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it will be in your budget when we start that process. I believe we have a presentation in May. So around April, you're gonna see what it looks like, so you all can pass it to see where we are, but you'll get that.
Dr. Ellis,
Yes, sir.
when is our next meeting with our county commissioner? Will we have that information available to them at that time?
I'm looking at Sarita, but I think it's May 1st, 3rd, or something like that. May.
Yeah, it went out already.
Yeah, I think it went, I think it's the first week of May, possibly.
So have you and Dr. Washington been in communication with Robbie and Mr. Outlaw regarding some of the issues that's coming up?
So we met, I believe, me and Ms. Miller met with Mr. Davis probably a week ago concerning the facility plan. And we addressed that issue, and I told him, because he wanted to know when we were going to meet about the budget. So I shared with him, just like I told y'all, they'll get two budgets, one with and one without, so they'll know where these heavy hits are, is what I call it.
Okay, thank you.
And I have one more statement before we move forward. I hope that we as a board can stick together and tell county commissioners who are responsible for funding us what we need to continue to educate our students in our district. We need to stand together with that.
So in transportation, we're going to lose some students, but we're not going to lose equipment. Edgecombe County Bus Garage only accepts 66 passenger buses. Nash County has 72 passenger, but Wilson has 35 park buses over there, so they will be supplying Edgecombe the buses for the merger.
Mr. Meyer, can you just briefly talk about how this was in the conversation with DPI?
Yes. So I had a conversation with Shannon on DPI with Rhonda Wainwright, I believe it is, from Edgecombe. And we talked about the bus situation. I told her that we had two buses that were 66 passenger at that time, and they were 21 years old. Since then, we already sold them. Shannon said there's no issues with buses. Wilson had to park 35 buses 2 years ago due to short drivers. They're contracting a lot of their transportation out to private industries. So they have 35 park buses right now at Wilson, and they're willing to give them up to Edgecombe. And they're new buses. I mean, they're fairly new buses. He told me, don't worry about the buses.
And for special education in 504, we have been working with the special ed department in Edgecombe County. We are really working hard to provide a smooth transition for our students with disabilities. We have worked through our list of students. We provided them with exactly what related services they receive, what their current settings are, as well as any equipment needs that the students may need if the equipment is not going with the students. We've also are working with the preschool department, and they're involved with the Exceptional Children's Preschool Department. They're invited to the transition meetings we're having now and the Exceptional Children's initial referral meetings for students transferring to Edgecombe, so we can plan together with the students. We've also provided a list of students eligible for our Section 504 plans, and we're going to supply those plans once they have all been updated for the transition. And we're also sharing any 504 EC paperwork for students transferring that they'll not be able to access in ECATS, which is our state accountability system for exceptional children. Any questions?
Good evening. The Academic Services and Accountability Department has worked very closely with the Edgecombe County. I feel like we've become best friends, but we are happy to do it because they're our students until they are not. And even when they are not, we still want to ensure their success. So we've conducted joint learning walks at the schools that will transition over: Baskerville, DS Johnson, Fairview, and Parker. And this is more than the facilities walkthrough. It has really been a learning walk to look at instruction and instructional materials in use. We've also, we are assisting them with NC Pre-K licensure for Fairview. They plan to use that facility for pre-K for Edgecombe County. So we are guiding them through that process and giving them the information that they need. Also with kindergarten registration, because those families still have to register for kindergarten. So we are helping with that. We have collaborated on the Read to Achieve data transfer. There is, with that Read to Achieve legislation, they need to know the students that have passed the gateway, those who have not, and also in coordination with that, how that summer reading camp will look, because they will host that from the students from those schools. So we're working jointly on that effort. Next month, our elementary and secondary content specialists will meet with Edgecombe to provide information about our instructional resources and really go through that with them. And speaking of transitions, we're coordinating trips for our middle school students who will transfer to Edgecombe, to North Edgecombe High, to go ahead and visit that school for transition. Any questions about any of that?
I would just like to make one comment. I appreciate you making that opening statement that you did. They're our students.
Thank you. Thank you.
So moving forward with next steps in the demerger process, ORED redistricting. Last Thursday, Dr. Ellis and I, we had a Zoom meeting with the ORED representative. He wanted some clarification questions answered regarding, he just read where the $40 million for Southern Nash Middle, so he wanted some questions, had some questions surrounding that, so we were able to provide some clarity with that. So once he has given us some maps or some scenarios, we're going to bring you back together individually, board members, and share that with you, like we did with the facilities plan. And then once we do that, we're going to come back and bring everything back towards the committee for your further review and also for your input. And then we're going to put it out to the community for community meetings so they can give us feedback as well from the community in terms of where their child may be going or not going to school. And then we'll bring it back for a vote, hopefully in April. I will just say this, we're keeping our fingers crossed for these dates for March and April. Because we know that once it gets out to the community, we get feedback from the community, they may have some concerns, it may go back to ORED again for some minor adjustments. And then we'll bring it back for the full board in April for your final vote and approval. And of course, last bullet there, those teacher allotments, that will be determined, those positions where the students are. So wherever the students are, that's where those teachers will go, and HR will be handling that piece as well. And hopefully we will have this finalized for a final vote by April. Keep your fingers crossed. Any questions?
Not so much a question, but a recommendation, sincerely. The one-on-ones with us, they're good. I just ask that maybe we get the information a little bit ahead of time before we have the one-on-one, so we have an opportunity to really analyze, so we can actually ask decent questions ahead of time, so it doesn't look like we waited 4 or 5 days or 4 or 5 weeks before we all meet again, before we ask something. That's all I request.
I'm sure they'll drive most of that, so.
Right.
Glad to.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
So any questions about any of the departments?
Yes, sorry. Ms. Wallace. Under your section, we talked about the 1331 that has put in their survey answers. From what you know, when I ask that gently, how many are eligible to retire no matter what they marked on the survey?
I don't have that number, Mr. Edwards. And the reason being, it's kind of hard to determine that based on your years of experience, because that could be combined with me coming from another state, but I don't have enough years in this state to actually retire. Then you have people such as myself who has years to retire and 2 years of sick leave who could possibly go as well. So it's just hard to determine how many we have that are eligible for retirement due to various scenarios within their years of experience or service.
Any more questions? Okay, that was it.
Well, I have to do the riff, so I came up.
We are now at item number 4, RIF recommendation.
So I really hate to have to bring this information to your attention, but I think at this point, we can't avoid it. Looking at the data that I just shared with you, based on the results of the intentions of staff members, many of them just want to remain in Nash County Public Schools. And we just don't have the positions to place all of them in the areas where they may be qualified. So with that being said, on behalf of Dr. Ellis, the policy requires that we outline the reason for the RIF. And it states that you have 3 options, and we're exercising the first option. Do you have it, Mr. McQueen? Okay. I think they're looking for it. Okay. There are 3 options that are grounds for RIF. We're exercising the first option, that is system reorganization, closing consolidation or reorganization of schools, school buildings or facilities, elimination of a curriculum offering program or school operation. And of course, with the demerger, this is the main reason for the RIF in our district. So it then goes on to say that we do have to look at some preliminary determination and steps. The superintendent determines the need to enforce the policy in the best interest of the school system. The superintendent determines which positions shall be subjected to reduction by identifying the positions, departments, or programs that meet the criteria. And then we look at the criteria in more detail, which you will see on the next slide, and it breaks it down based on our certified area, which encompasses our teachers and our school level administrators as well. And we look at the following criteria. The first criteria that we will focus on in the event that we must RIF, work performance and evaluation ratings. We will look at NESA's data, mandatory or directed plans, non-demonstrated or developed ratings on observations, and PMP letters. We will also look at, if applicable, student test performance data, those in the tested areas. Based on the EVAS data, was it below proficiency? Did they not meet growth? Did they exceed growth? All of that information will be taken into consideration. Next area that we will focus on is program enrollment, programmatic needs. For example, I may need IB teachers, and I only have a selected few of teachers that are certified to teach IB. That's the same for AIG band, just giving you some examples of the programmatic needs we will focus on. The next area that we will look at is areas of licensure. Am I duly certified? Math and science are generally areas that we have a hard time finding positions, folks that are certified to fulfill those positions. So we will look at the licensure areas as well. Service and extra duty positions. These are things such as I may be the critical care response person at my school. I've done it for years. I have a diabetic patient or student that I have to follow throughout the day because the nurse is not with us 100% of the time. It will also look at areas for EC. When we look at EC positions, we do have specific areas where they have to go through additional training to support some of the severe EC needs of our students. The next area that we will focus on is service and extra duty positions. Am I a driver? Am I a coach? Am I a person that will assist with major field trips and things of that nature for a position that nobody else wants to do? Length of service, that means that how many years of experience do I have? We will look at it in the county and out of the county. And the last thing would be degree level. Do I have a master's? Do I have a doctorate? Do I have, of course, you have a bachelor's at least if you are in the certified area. So when it comes to classified, based on the areas that we will focus on, this is the criteria. First item we will look at is work performance and evaluation ratings. Middle of the year evaluation showing below standard if they're on a monitor plan, things like that. Next will be degree license. Do I have a degree? We do have a lot of classified employees that have a bachelor's degree. They may be able to go on and teach a class or become a teacher. Do they have a bus license? And are they in the TA to teacher program? Those are some of the areas we will focus on. Attendance, that is a huge one for us. And we do have a lot of people that tend to take off on Fridays and Mondays. And I'm not saying that if they have a legitimate reason to be out, they're on FMLA, they're on leave of absence for medical reasons, caring for a family or loved ones, those things will not be taken into consideration when we look at attendance. Special duty, again, are they providing any assistance that's beyond their call of duty that provides a service to the school? And length of service, we will look at that in county and out of county. I think that's it, right? Okay. Questions? And your feedback is appreciated in case we did overlook an area that we may need to focus on.
I have a question. Yes.
Yes.
Well, more, I guess more of a concern, I would say, with the attendance. I do kind of have a concern about highest to lowest number. We talk about excessive attendance or excessive absence rather. That's one thing, but we give teachers days that they should be able to use them. So I just want to be clear on teachers should be allowed to use days and the consideration for excessive absences versus just a teacher using the days that they are provided. It's almost not fair, you hold it against them just because they use days versus some teachers who come to school sick and should be at home. So I just wanted to put that out there, because excessive absence is one thing, but then just regular absences or sick days or whatever, I wouldn't think that would be fair to include that if it's not excessive.
Okay. And we can, if you choose to leave that in there, make sure that it's excessive. And we do have a lot of excessive
Right.
absences.
Any other questions for Mrs. Wallace?
I just want to make sure, and I think I've asked this question. I've asked both of my questions before, so bear with me.
Okay.
With the evaluation process, I know in the past that we have not been good stewards of evaluations. We won't have a situation where we are just now evaluating somebody and for the first time, and we are recommending that we RIF this person simply because for the first time that we evaluated this person, they got below standard evaluation. We're not using that against a person if the superior has not done his job in evaluating this person all along.
Correct. And that has been reiterated again and again to our principals. Can't wait till last minute, and because it's somebody maybe I have a bias against or not, then I'm gonna give them below standards and hopeful that
And
they
get
will
rid
get
of
caught up in the RIF.
Right.
Yes. We
Okay.
have stressed that again and again with the principals.
Because that would be one of the things that I would be most concerned about. And the second question that I have, and I've asked this before, so I'm just going to ask it again just for the record, whatever. But we are not talking about just the teachers or classified staff that work at the schools in Edgecombe County. We're talking about across the district.
Yes, ma'am. This, if we have to RIF, it will impact all of,
Amber Alert.
Sorry.
yes.
So I've seen Amber Alert.
Okay, it will impact all of our employees across the entire district. And that has been shared with our principals, with senior staff, the whole 9 yards, again and again. But we have to come up with a plan of criteria that we have to look at, and we have to be good stewards by going by this, whatever criteria you all approve, so that in the event we must RIF, we have a starting point. We don't know when our red is gonna come. We don't know when the plan and allotments are gonna come, but we need to be ready because we can't wait till the last minute. And everybody asks on a regular basis, when will I know? When will I know? And there are many factors that are preventing us to answer those questions right now.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions for Mrs. Wallace?
I just have one. The TA to teacher program is it's under the classified criteria. Is that someone that is TA now that would be going into the teacher program, well, trying to go into that program, or someone that may be there now? Like we have some TAs who are now teachers, say their first year. Are they considered in that portion, or are they still considered in the certified portion?
The TA, I just want to make sure I understand your question.
Okay, sorry.
If they're currently in the TA to teacher program, they are classified.
Okay,
Did that answer it?
yes.
Okay, and we can only take except 5 at a time because of funding, unless we get additional funding from the state. I do have one clarifying question, just so I know how to bring this to the board. When it came to attendance, and this is not the correct copy, updated copy, because attendance is in the certified one as well. Do we want to leave attendance in there? We want to have excessive attendance or what? So we know what you're voting on when we come to the meeting next week.
I'm not on this committee, but as a teacher, being fair to teachers, you are allotted days, so you should be able to use those days. Now, when you exceed those days, or, you know, you have some circumstances, you know, that's different. I'm fine with attendance, but I would prefer it would be excessive attendance, not just, you know.
So
she-
define
she-
what that looks like.
Right,
Define what that looks
So
like, okay.
if I miss 5 days and you miss 4, then that could be the 1 point, you know, difference in our job, and I don't think that's fair. If you miss 15 and I miss 2, that's different, you know, but that's it.
I would.
Right,
I'm
that
sorry.
should.
Okay, so, I will facilitate in Mr. Denton's absence by, addressing each one of the committee members, if you don't mind. Because if I heard correctly, the superintendent is seeking approval for this to go before the full board next week. So Mrs. Wallace needs directives as to how, things should be worded. So I just wanna, have the committee's point taken at, full value. So we'll start with Dr. Chavis, if she has any.
I'm in favor of it, but excessive that she just mentioned, I think should be part of it and be clear. Because there are extenuating circumstances you don't want to penalize.
All right, Mr. Lamb.
I agree with Mr. Dr. Chavis. And that should also show up in, like I told him, the principal's evaluation should know clear about excessive attendance.
Mr. Gray.
I concur. Yes,
You
I
good?
agree.
All right, and Ms.
Yes.
Buller.
I agree, but I want to make this clarification. If we have scheduled optional days, and I choose to exercise my right to take that day off, I would not expect us to penalize someone. But if on Monday morning, I decide I need a mental health day, I'm not going, just call in because I can. That's what I call excessive. And with that, I'm good.
We do have a policy for excessive absences that we follow closely when we have employees that are abusing it.
Okay, I'm good. With that being said, Madam Chair, did you finish the board?
Yes,
No.
all the committee members. Any other board members have any other comments? You may comment. All right. Since this is an item for approval, is there a motion from the committee to recommend the RIF policy with the stated amendments to the full board for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Board Member Gray, seconded by Dr. Chavis. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please let it be known by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Motion carried.
Thank you.
And if there is no further business to come before the Academic Services and Accountability, I'm sorry, let me get it right. The Administrative Services and Operations Committee, I move to adjourn. All right, our final committee that will convene is the Academic Services and Accountability Committee. Mr. Lamb.
I'd like to call the roll. Dr. Washington.
Here.
Chris Bishop,
Present.
Sharonda Thomas Bullock,
Here.
Bill Sharp. I'll entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Sharonda Bullock, second by Dr. Washington. Field trips. All in favor say aye. All opposed. Motion carried. Field trips. Jeff White.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I have one field trip. Southern Nash High School is overnight state honors band at UNCG. The dates are April 26th, which is a Friday, through the 28th. 5 students are eligible to attend. Parents will be taking the students with 1 male, 1 female. The superintendent seeks your approval.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the field trip.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Sharonda Thomas Bullock, second by Dr. Washington. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Request for research. Ms. Griffin.
I have 2 requests for research this month. One is from Jade Stewart at High Point University, the why factors behind a student's post-high school secondary pathway decisions. And a second one, which is an expansion of a previously approved request from Riley Weinhold at North Carolina State University, the social, emotional, and behavioral impacts being seen in elementary schoolers as they return to school post-pandemic. So the requests, remember, are at the participation and the discretion of the principal and the teacher in the building. The superintendent recommends these, and this is for information only.
I'll entertain a motion for request for research.
So moved.
This is for information.
Information only,
Oh, okay.
yes. Yep. Thank you.
It's okay. Decided.
MOU for Spring Arbor, Rocky Mount CTE Health Science Clinicals for Rocky Mount High School. Chad Thompson.
Good evening. So tonight I'm presenting an MOU for Spring Arbor. This is a health facility that we use with our nurse aide students so that they can get their practical experiences. So we are looking to partner with Spring Arbor of Rocky Mount. Superintendent is recommending this tonight for your approval.
I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Sharonda Bullock, second by Dr. Washington. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed likewise. Motion carried. That is the end of our meeting. Any other comments? Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Lamb. And that concludes our committee meetings on this evening. Thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you, you too.